So welcome to the last workshop for the Changemaker Challenge. For those of you who don't know me, I am Alan Kersner. I work in the IEI. I teach Lean Startup, and I also work on a number of cross-university programs. And the Changemaker Challenge, this is our 6th year. And as you know, it is focused on social impact ideas, hopefully for profit, but also not for profit. Either way, you need to have cash coming in your door to keep you functioning and servicing whatever audience you are trying to enhance the lives of. Lindsay, if you could go to the next, please. So the submission deadline for the Changemaker Challenge is this coming Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. and that's 11:59 sharp. I would strongly encourage, because a bunch of you are not yet in the submission portal, having started your idea. If you care about anything, making the world a better place, making your neighborhood a better place, focusing on discrimination, hunger, violence, climate control, submit. It's a straightforward form. We're only looking for preliminary ideas at this point. You could win. There's a total of $6,000 plus awarded in this challenge. And you'll learn from Ellen Weber, who's an expert in finance. And if we go to the next slide, you also have the opportunity Monday night to meet personally with a number of expert mentors. These are people who are successful social entrepreneurs, faculty who may be involved in social entrepreneurship, as well as funders of social impact ventures. So it's a who's who of social impact in the Philadelphia area. It's a great opportunity starting at 5, going to 6:30. Scan this QR code and we will have you scheduled to meet with several mentors. Great, thank you. We could go to the next. So it is my sincere honor to introduce Ellen Weber. If I visited your class over the past week, you've already heard me rave about her, but I'll do it again. So Ellen's a former executive director of the IEI. And for the last, you could correct me, Ellen, 10 to 12 years, she's run the largest angel investment group in the Philadelphia area, Robinhood Ventures. What to me is most impressive is for probably 10, 15 years ago, before it was on anyone's radar, Ellen was fighting to gain angel funding, venture funding for groups that were totally discriminated against or ignored. Women, people of color, people with binary gender identification. And Ellen was fighting the fight before the rest of the world knew there was an issue. And as I have mentioned, and I'll embarrass her once more, Philadelphia Magazine identifies and names the 100 most influential Philadelphians every year. And pre-COVID, Ellen was named to that list 4 years in a row. So she is a true, in the positive sense, mover and shaker. She is unbelievably helpful to people, and she will help you fight the good battle. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to Ellen.
Wow. Thank you, Alan. I feel like I paid you for that. Let me share my screen. Just give me a minute here. Okay, can you all see telling your story? Yeah. Okay. Someone give me a thumbs up. Lindsay, you can see telling your story? Okay, Tony, thank you. All right. So what we're going to focus on today is just the part about telling your story. And the first thing I tell everybody is don't keep it bottled up. Tell everybody you know. Tell your 85-year-old grandmother and see if she understands. Tell your 5-year-old nephew and see if they understand, and anywhere in between, right? Because the goal, one of the most important things you can do is to tell your story simply and succinctly. And if you can do that, that's half the battle. Okay. So, first of all, Alan wanted me to talk a little bit about the early stage funding ecosystem, and I'm going to come back to that. So there's a lot of different ways to get funding for your idea, and you just want to keep this in mind as you're thinking about your story, because different audiences want to know different things. So early on, you're going to do it with, whatever money you might have saved. You might put, put stuff on credit cards to fund your company. Then you're going to go to friends and family. And friends and family doesn't have to, a lot of people say, there's nobody in my family who could lend me money to get started on this. But there might be a boss, someone you're working for. There might be somebody that in your network. So think about the broader perspective of friends, friends and family. And that the final F is actually fools, but it's really friends and family. And there's crowdfunding, and there's a lot of different ways to do crowdfunding. I've had companies financed by a class, even. Someone kind of passed the hat in their class and said, I'm working on this. If you each put in some money, you'll get a couple of shares in the company. So there's even that kind of crowdfunding. There's a lot of platforms. That's for a whole nother topic. And then there's grants. We're going to talk a little bit more about grants later on. There's also business plan competitions like this one. This is a great source of funding. We have an alum, Nick, who won business plan competition at Temple. He won it at University of Delaware, which was his undergrad. He won a statewide competition. He won, he funded about $200,000 worth of business plan competitions. It's hard, but it is possible. And one of the great things about doing business plan competitions is you get your story in front of a lot of people, and you never know who in the room might be able to help you. Even if it's not about money, there's always somebody in that room that might want to help. There's also accelerators. I'm a big fan of accelerators, although not all our accelerators are created equal. And I always tell people, if you're thinking about an accelerator, do not pay money and go talk to Greg or Alan or Lindsay, someone in the IEI who can guide you as to whether it's a good accelerator for you. And there's also regional agencies. Then you get to the angels, who are either individuals or groups that fund, and then venture capitalists. That's a little bit further down the line for most of you, but that's the general funding ecosystem. You'll notice banks aren't on here because for the most part, startups are unbankable, okay? At some point, if you had actual customers and you had inventory and that sort of thing, then you become bankable, and there's different banks that are better for that than others. So let's talk about, because this affects your story, what is it that funders want to know? And interestingly enough, this matches up very closely with the Changemaker Challenge. Funders want to know, what's the problem that you're solving? How are you solving it? How are you solving it differently than other people? Why will your solution be a success? Tell us about your market, tell us about your customer, tell us about your stakeholders and the type of impact you'll have. Give us some evidence that your team can execute. And granted, if you're a sophomore in college, you're not going to be able to say, well, I was an executive at a pharma company, right? But there are examples that you can give of ways that you have executed, ways that you have met your commitments and kept to a plan. And then finally, funders want to know a lot about revenue model and financials. Now, my understanding is that that's not an issue for the change. That's not what they're focused on for the Changemaker Challenge, but you still want to make sure that there is a path forward, that either through donations, through, selling things, through some type of model, that there's enough money in it to keep you working on it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about an investor pitch. So what is it? And interrupt me at any point that you have a question, okay? And I'm trying not to use business lingo, but stop me if I am. So what is it? It's a brief presentation, but with an investor focus. So you want to understand, back to what I was just saying, is what investors care about. It is used in the first meeting. It might be used at venture fairs. It might be used in competitions. The goal is to grab people's attention really early and to keep it by hitting the highlights. And you want to leave the investor eager to know more. So you're not getting into the detail. It's not a sales presentation. You're not overloading them with information. You don't even have to do a demo usually, okay? You might want to have, a sample of your product or a demo ready if you have it, but it doesn't have to be part of your pitch necessarily. So one thing you want to do is start with a compelling slide. Why? Because first of all, if there's any technical issues going on, it could be up on the screen for quite a while. So I like to make sure that that it grabs the audience's attention. You can also use this as your last slide, because again, if there's Q&A, it might, it'll be up there for a while. This is an example of one from the BYOBB. When you look at this, you can tell what the company's name is. You get a sense of what they do. It's a financial onboarding assistant. You get a sense that it's looking to the future, and then it's targeted to millennials, because that's who's pictured in here, right? So the audience looking at this slide already has a little bit of a hint of what's going on. So it's great to have your name, you have a logo if you have it, some kind of tagline, okay? And a good visual. Find a visual, use it in your slides, and there's a lot of free, don't use someone's without attribution. There's a lot of places to get free graphics, off the internet. So you're going to start with defining the problem. What's the problem? Who's the customer? What's the problem? How do you know about this problem? How do you create value? For Changemaker Challenge, one of the best things is to say, is to make it personal, right? You don't have to do that, but it's really helpful. I observed at Temple that there are people who don't have clothes to wear to interviews, so I wanted to put together a closet for people. That's a former Changemaker Challenge entry, right? And so they made it very clear. I saw this firsthand. Or even more personally, I had to go to an interview. I had nothing to wear. I had to go and borrow stuff from people. And and then we all started borrowing clothes and helping each other out. And I realized there might be a better way to do this, right? So make it personal if you can. Who's the customer? What's their problem? Why do you know about this problem? You don't want to sound out of touch, like this is a problem that I think that other people have, but I don't have any connection to it, okay? And then, so define the problem. And if you can talk about how big the problem is, that's helpful. Now, I believe with Changemaker Challenge, it can be a very local, right? It doesn't have to be something nationwide. But give a definition of how big that problem is, okay? This is an example from a more science kind of presentation. And so there's an issue with treating glaucoma. And so the CEO stated the problem as, there are current treatments, they don't work. There's unacceptable failure rates. And she shows all the different ways that, all the different methods that are currently out there and how high the failure rates are. This is an impactful slide. Here's another one. This was done by someone who said, I really like beef jerky. It's really healthy, but it's really high in sugar, and sugar's not good for you. And as a personal trainer, it's really important to me to give people healthy food choices, right? So this was his problem slide. It just, 25 grams of sugar is a lot. It really hits people. This is one that I love. This is someone who came up with a solution to decrease the number of 911 emergency calls by creating kind of like an Uber for non-emergency calls. And so she showed that worldwide, there's 280, or US-wide, 288 billion in excess costs each year, but because people are using 911 to go to, and taking ambulances to go to the hospital. Okay. And so that's a huge number. That shows an impact. Any questions so far? Okay. Then you want to describe your product and service. Again, don't get in the weeds. You want it simple enough that anybody else can wait. Your goal is to have the person you're talking to turn to another person the next day and say, I saw the coolest presentation where someone came up with an idea for, an alternative to ambulances, right? If you can describe it that simply, then the other people can describe it for you and really socialize it for you. That's your goal. And, if you lose me in the very beginning, when you're describing the product, I'm not paying attention to the rest of the presentation because I've lost you. So here's a good slide. This is from some former Villanova students. They wanted lactose-free, but real dairy ice cream. And they came up with a solution. Their statement is so simple. Beckon is the first and only premium lactose-free dairy ice cream on the market. You don't get much simpler than that statement. I can repeat that without looking at the slide. And then they had some great visuals that they mocked up. And we don't necessarily expect you to have, your whole marketing campaign done yet, but certainly there's, you could show a bowl of ice cream, right? There's something that you can do to make this feel real. Here's another one. This is for a company that we've invested in. They have come up with a cooling cap to help women who typically lose their hair during, when they're going through chemo. And so what the entrepreneur did was they created the patient journey, and they showed very simply, step by step, how it works and what happens. Okay. And this is something that everybody can do very simply. And I encourage you to do that. Draw it on a piece of paper with stick figures. Okay. But draw out the customer journey. It's the best way to help you describe it to other people. And it's a very important part of the product or service description. Okay. So when I go to the example of, using again, the example of the coming up with a place to store clothes for people for interviews, how does it work? Where do the clothes come from, right? Where do they go? Are they locked up? Are they stored? How do people get access to it? How do you, keep it private for people who are private? How do you do that? Kind of you want to think those kind of things through and draw it out. So this is my picture. Draw it out very simply before you submit your application, because it will help you with the language that you need to submit. Am I doing okay so far, Alan? Time and everything? Okay, great. All right. You want to describe the competitive landscape. Okay. And again, you want to use, so by competitive landscape, I mean, who else is providing solutions to the problems? We see many times in the Changemaker challenge that people aren't aware of other solutions to the problem that you're trying to solve. And the judges are in the social impact community, and they're very aware. So you want to do your homework. So let's say you come up with a great idea for helping kids with after school activities so that they're safe. Make sure you do an internet search on alternatives in the Philadelphia school district, right? What are they providing? What are they doing? So that you can really hone in on what are you doing that's special? Because if you don't do that, it's hard for the judges to kind of take you seriously and to understand where you're special. Alan, did you want to say something?
No, I just want to reinforce it. And as you said, sometimes it's as simple as a Google search to be sure what's out there.
And I think it's also important, this is where it's important to talk to other people. Someone you talk to may say, oh, I know someone who's doing something similar. Now, that's not necessarily bad. If someone's doing something similar, you might talk to them and come together with a better solution, right? Or if it's something similar, you can say, we're similar to this group, but here's how we're different. Here's what we're doing. Not even better necessarily. You don't have to, especially in the world of social impact, you don't have to denigrate your competition. You don't have to talk down about them, but you just hone in on why you're special. Like after school programs, there may be something that's really special for a small cohort of kids that isn't appealing to other people, right? So this is appealing to this cohort of kids, right? We're coming up with an after-school activity for transgender kids, right? Something special for them where they feel safe. That's a really nice competitive landscape, right? But within, maybe there are other activities for transgender kids. You want to know what those activities are, okay? So you want to understand that. One way to do this is what we call a competitive power grid template. So you list yourself in the first column. Well, the first column is actually different benefits, right? And then you list yourself in the first of the companies, and then you list some competitors. And there's a great video here, and Alan has my presentation, so you can get this. You can watch this video. I really like it. It's how to do a competitive analysis slide. And then let me show you what it looks like in the real world. So here's Beck Ice Cream again, right? So here's their unique positioning versus the competition. They went through the benefits, right? It's women owned, there's no corn syrup, it's clean ingredients, it's lactose free. And they show where they can show where they beat the competition. So you can see that, for example, Ben & Jerry's does have a lot of the same elements as Beckon, right? Creamy texture, clean ingredients, etc. But they're not lactose free. And if you care about it, they're not women owned. So they've clearly defined their competitive positioning. And interestingly, their being women owned has gotten them a lot of grants and a lot of, interestingly enough, stuff I didn't even know you get for being a women owned company. They got some discounts from retailers for shelf promotions and things like that. So we'll get to that when we talk to grants, okay? And this is a tool that I like that you can use to describe your competitive positioning. Our company is the best at this thing, and here's why, okay? So it could be as simple as our yoga company is the best at providing tools to instructors, tools to instructors. And the reason why is because that's been an area of focus, and we have this amazing tool set, okay? So even that is an example of competitive positioning, okay? Is that clear around competitive positioning? It sounds scary. It doesn't have to be, just you want to do your homework to understand why are you different, and why are you going to be, why will people want to use you, okay? Here's another example. Why we'll win. We're the only solution that's showing the whole picture in one place. We have the smartest tech, and we're on their channels, meaning we're on this was one that was on the channels for Gen Z. They came up with a solution that, whereas everything else was kind of boomer focused, they came up with something that would be appealing and interesting to Gen Z, okay? I don't think you need this for the, is it still worth talking about, Alan? You can't.
Yeah, I would still talk about it. It's not required here. It will be required if anyone enters to be your own boss ball.
So you want to talk about the people involved in your company. You want to list the 2 or 3 key people on your team and the background. Okay. So like, what do they bring to the table? And I'll show you a few examples. Again, as a undergrad college student, you might, and you've got a solution for after school care. You might have been a camp counselor. You might have, you might have worked in an after school care thing. You might be, involved in the entrepreneurship student association at Temple. There's something that you've done which can apply. Okay. And you want to show if you have like a balanced team, right? So you want to show, so you may not have a technology background, but somebody else in your group does, or you may not be an athlete, but you may be the finance person, and this isn't a athletic field, but you've got an athlete in your group, someone who's experienced the problem that athletes experience, or whatever the example is, right? And then you might want to acknowledge additional key players that you know that you need, that if you got the funding, you could bring on. And then if you have advisors, list them, okay? And, one of the things the IEI is really super about is helping you find advisors and mentors. Now, I would recommend not putting Greg Fegley or Alan Kersner or Ellen Weber in as on your advisory board unless you've talked to them. We tend to show up in a lot of presentations. But it's kind of a given that we're giving some support. But who else is an advisor? Could be a professor. It could be somebody in the field that you've gone to research. One of the great things about being an entrepreneur, especially a in school or younger entrepreneurs, you can call almost anybody and say, I'm at Temple, or I'm a recent Temple alum, and say, I could really use some guidance, and advice on what I'm doing. And you'd be surprised how people respond to that. Plus, Greg and the IEI has built this beautiful network of advisors and mentors as well. And they should round out some of the deficiencies in your team. So here's an example. And again, when these two created this, they may be 5 years out of school, I think. So it's Katie and Gwen, and they put a little humor into it, right? So Katie's lactose intolerant. She's a co-founder. Her focus is sales and operations. She graduated from Villanova in 2012. She was a former RN, and she's a graduate of the Penn State ice cream program. So she's showing where her expertise comes in. Gwen, ice cream lover. She's not lactose intolerant, but she loves ice cream. She's a co-founder. Her focus is on marketing and brand strategy. Now, when I look at this, I go, okay, well, one knows sales, one knows marketing and brand. Who knows finance, right? They look a little weak on finance to me. So what do? They found advisors. So they got Dan Kruk, former senior VP of finance. Okay. As an investor, that is really reassuring to me that, that Dan is going to keep an eye out on their finances, right? And help them think through what are the building blocks they need. But I love that they've got some sales and operations experience, some marketing and brand strategy. Okay. The other thing, and again, not necessary for Changemaker Challenge, but 100% necessary for investors, is describe your revenue model and show a simple financial slide. Now, when I think about investors, I'm thinking about people who are writing a check for a piece of the company. But this is just as true for a donor. A donor wants to understand that you've thought through the sustainability of your idea, that you have thought through what's it going to cost to do things, whether it's rent, whether it's salaries, whether it's insurance, that you've thought through those things, and you've thought through where is the money going to come from. So I use the word revenue, but revenue can be donations. Revenue can be pro bono help, in-kind services. Revenue can be, you can come up with a nonprofit solution that still brings in some type of money, but you want to make sure that you want to show that you've thought that through. Now, my examples are, again, kind of business focused, but they don't have to be. So here's an example of a revenue model. Somebody said, so this is for an internet solution. We're going to charge small companies $100 a month for our solution. We're going to charge growing retailers $500 a month. We're going to charge enterprises $1,000 a month. But, maybe your thing is we're going to charge, you're going to do something for schools. We're going to charge parents $5 a month. We're going to charge the school $100 a month for $100 per kit. You can think about it that way. In the nonprofit world, what's the charge going to be? Where's the money going to come in? Okay. Or we're going to have sponsors, right? So what's the value proposition to the sponsors, and what are they going to pay? And then this is a very simple financial chart. It takes a lot of work to get here. This is in the 100,000. So in other words, the revenue in 2022 was 277,000. I never want to see financials that say in 2025, you're going to have $10,795,231.75. Okay. I never want to see cents. I don't even want, I want to see this stuff rounded, because it helps my brain process. And so and you want some kind of units. So it might be kits, it might be schools, it might be organizations, it might be people, but what's your unit and how many units each year? What does the revenue look like? What's the total expenses? And then I use the term EBITDA, but that's a fancy accounting word for net income. Okay. What's your net going to be? And if anybody tells you for a startup that you need to worry about stuff like appreciation and taxes and stuff like that, tell them to go away. You really don't. And partly because most companies aren't profitable in the first year, right? So you're not paying any taxes. So don't worry about that stuff. Stay, when you're creating the financials behind this, you want to get as granular as possible. You want to get as granular in your assumptions as you can. You want to do it month by month. And you can get a mentor to kind of help you think through all those, assumptions. And then you start testing each assumption. So it's a really powerful tool. That's a whole nother subject for another day. But it doesn't have to be complicated. And it's a really simple Excel or Google Sheets spreadsheet, but you have you have just different components to it. And we can talk about that another session. Okay. And then be ready to answer the question, what do you, when do you think you'd get to break even? And, think about if a donor said, or, a sponsor or somebody said, if I wrote you a check today for the amount you're asking for, could you go faster, right? What would it look like if you got the money today? You want to be able to also show the milestones, right? What are the milestones? And think about the milestones. So let's say you won the Changemaker challenge. What milestones does the Changemaker challenge help you reach? And then what are the additional milestones and additional funding that you'd need to get to, right? But I think it's really helpful to think about, Alan, how much is the Changemaker challenge first prize?
$1,500 in each track.
Okay. So let's say, what I like to see someone do is really think through, what can I do with 1,500, right? And because that, as a judge, I think about, is 1,500 a drop in the bucket and they need $1 million? Or is $1,500 going to get them to the point where, maybe they can get maybe they can test out a kit in a school, or maybe they can you know, get a, you know, work in the engineering department and get a 3D printout of what they're trying to do? Can that 1,500 get them somewhere? And then what are the next things, you know, what are the next money amounts that you need? Okay. And then, so this is an old one, but this is an example. The company was saying that with the BYOBB grand prize, they could get through the alpha prototype, and then they would need, you know, X number of dollars for full development, approval and profits, etc. Okay. And then if you're going to an investor, a typical investor, you know, like an angel investor like me, you want a very clear, and you know, that's how I can get another session. But let's say you were asking for 500,000, you want to be able to show where's that 500,000 going? Okay, very specifically. Okay, and then, okay, so that's the presentation. Let me stop there. Questions? I threw a lot out. There must be some questions. No? Okay. All right. So then the next question is, okay, Ellen, that's really nice, but where do I get the funding from? So let's come back to this. Oh, actually, there's some things in chat. Let me look at there. I'm sorry. Are any of those for me? No. Do not need, okay. Okay, none of those are for me. Okay, great. All right, so so where do you get your funding from? So let's start with well, I'll go to the next slide. Let's start with grants, okay, and we'll come back to this slide. So grants. So there's a lot of places to look for grants. There's a app called Fundera that's free that you can look at all kinds of interesting, I'll show you what it looks like in a minute. So there's Fundera and there's grants.gov. Now grants.gov tends to be for more sciencey and academic projects. But if that, I say sciencey with all due respect, I apologize for that. So academic science type projects, medicine, things like that, you go to grants.gov. And actually you probably want to work with the research department here at Temple, because they understand that stuff really, 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 really well. But there's other grants for all kinds of things, and I'll show you. And actually, I have a class on funding, and I have the students come up with a list of 5 potential grants that they might apply for. And then there's just, you know, there's all kinds of internet searches. So I'm going to show you what some of these look like. And then, so considerations, you want to keep your search focused. One of the things, because you could spend all of your time on grants and then forget about working on the company, right? But if you find a grant that's really fits what you're working on, that's worth going after. Don't let the grant drive your direction. I think that's really important. That happens sometimes. It gets people off track. And then again, remember that there are science and academic grants versus more topical ones. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is grants.gov. And so I put in the word maternity because there was a really interesting Changemaker challenge a couple of years ago that was trying to focus on maternal health and well, anyway, and the health of the babies after birth. And so you can see, just putting in the word maternity, there are 20 different grants that are focused on maternity, right, that are active right now. Okay. And then you would click on each one and look a little bit more deeply. Okay. And these are mostly through HHS, and some of them are with different companies. I was talking to someone from USAID recently. I was shocked at the number of interesting the things that they will fund. It's fascinating. So there's a lot of interesting grants that come from the government, and there are some from the state level and even the city level as well. And so it takes some research, but it's you'd be amazed just how much there is. Okay. Let's talk about any questions about grants before I move on. Okay. So let's talk
I
about.
have one. Sorry to
Yes.
interrupt. So I know you were saying not to kind of let the tail wag the dog on spending too much time on grants per se, but
Yeah.
that's kind of a hard one, right? Because it's not only the searching of the grants, but then each grant is usually extremely time intensive to apply for, right? And then
Yeah.
responsiveness on the back end to deal with these organizations. And I would imagine that a lot of these governmental grants especially are relatively bureaucratic.
Yes.
I'm going to put that out there. So, you know, I just looked up podcast, for example, and slew of grants on the governmental website.
Mhm.
So what's your advice on sort of, you know, forest for the trees? How do we approach that from a more practical standpoint when
Yeah.
we're in there looking at these grants?
So, and you know, anyone who's got expertise in this area, jump in. I would kind of leave the academic, this things in grants.gov for people who are working in academia. And I think there may be some people who are in that situation. That's kind of my reaction, because I tried to do a few myself, and it was, I mean, I was in tears almost, you know, trying to fill it out. But then I partnered with the folks in the research area at Temple, because it was for Temple. So they're, you know,
Right.
but anyways, but they knew exactly how to fill those things out, right? And so if you're, you know, if you know, if you're, and so there are a number of people who do Changemaker Challenge who are, you know, they're in the med school, for example, and they've got some technology. There's a lot of support for people to do that. I think the other types of grants are probably a little more approachable for the rest of us. And I thought I had put a slide in here for that. But you know, for example, I'll give you a really great example. So let's say, so maybe not applicable for Changemaker Challenge, but let's say you're a mom and pop retail store in Philadelphia, okay? There's a group, and the name escapes me right now, but there's a group that pays for new signage and storefronts. Because if you're a retailer, there's no better way of getting people into your store than a good sign, okay? And they give out a fair amount of grants every year. And it's not, they are going out of their way to make it not difficult. So you have to, I would look at them all and kind of assess what works and what doesn't work.
Okay.
It's a great intern project. So if you're a student, you know, you got to do it yourself. If you are, you know, if you have an intern working for you with your company, it's a great intern project. Go find me some grants and see how hard it is to fill out. You know, Tori Birch is another example of someone who's she's got a grant for women of color in fashion and retail. Okay. The grants are very, very specific. So you can see very quickly whether you might qualify or not. And once you see if you qualify, then you can kind of dial, you know, you can drill down further and see how much of a workload it takes. And some grants they're not that hard to apply for, but then there's a zillion people doing it. But I think a lot of these grants can help you, again, hone your message. And some of the grants do give you some advice on how to approach them. And as a matter of fact, it's kind of similar with accelerators. There's a zillion accelerators out there. And YC does something, which is one of my, you know, it's one of the best of the accelerators. And they actually have a presentation that they've done of what you have to do to apply to be a successful applicant to YC. So I encourage you to look for some of those materials on what to do to be successful. And also with the grants, the questions that are asked in the applications, because they're repetitive. So what you want to do is create modules, okay? Like typical questions and answers. It's very similar. And I say this on the angel investing side as well. All angels ask like 20 of the same questions, although the words might be a little bit different. And then they might have something really unique, okay? Like our group, for whatever reason, we ask what compensation is. Most people don't ask that in the application. We've just always historically done that. But there's like 20 questions that once you answer one angel group, you can easily do the others. It's a matter of cutting and pasting and fine tuning. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
So I would, so I actually, that's one of my answers. At the same token, if you are going through the funding process, you want to do the same thing, being really ready for due diligence, and create like modules for due diligence. And that way, when an investor says, we're looking for detail on these things, you go through your Dropbox or Google folders and give them what they've asked for. Okay. And then you can be really fast in your response. So I think part of it is just modularizing the answers to the question. So that's a great question with a very, very long answer. I apologize.
No, it was a great answer. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Modularize.
Okay.
Alan, you look like you want to add something.
Yeah, well, no, there's another question in the chat for you.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on a for-profit company with a nonprofit arm?
Well, in terms of, I think it's a great thing. I mean, a lot of for-profits do that. If you mean in terms of getting funded, it's a really confusing message. Okay. Anytime you have a confusing structure, you're going to have some potential investors walk away. All right. We're looking at a company right now that has a consulting firm and a product company, and they have an LLC over it and under it. And we're like, forget it. It's just too complicated. Right. So I think that gets complex. Now, what some groups do is they're a for-profit company, but they say we're going to donate 10% of our stuff to a certain charity. I think that's lovely. But unless that charity is really core to what you're trying to do, I really don't want to see you donating money to charity until your company has had some success. If I'm investing money in your company, I want every penny to go into the success of your company. Now, some people think it's social impact if it's a for-profit company and they donate some money to charity. In my mind, that's not really social impact, because you could choose to do that investing on your own. Okay. To me, social impact is, you're cleaning the water, you're doing something with climate, right? It's not, we're doing something really bad and we're going to donate 10% of our profits to, cleaning the ocean. Alan, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, no, I want to say I agree 100%, Ellen. And what we're looking for with social impact is something that is integrated into the main operations of your business. It could be multi-bottom line, whatever, but the, donating 10% was sort of considered socially good 15 years ago.
Right.
It's not anymore. And actually, not to be too cynical, but there are studies that show that consumers, when there's a for-profit with a nonprofit arm, think they're not really doing good and it's just a publicity stunt. So
That's
I
interesting, because people, 15 years ago, people bought stuff from a company because they were donating their profits. Right. Oh, that's interesting.
But Ellen's point of it really needs to be integrated into the core of your business is correct.
And I think, impact, for Changemaker Challenge, as you're telling your story, everything should be about impact. And the more areas of impact that you have, the better. So if you're doing one thing, a great example is there's a company called Wash Cycle Laundry. Now, their focus was doing laundry in a way that was better for the planet. But in addition to doing laundry in a way that was better for the planet, they used they used bikes as transportation, and they hired people returning to the workforce from incarceration. Okay. And there were other elements, and it wasn't a gimmick. It was just embedded in everything that they did for the company. It was part of their It's part of their message. So I think, you want to make sure that you're not doing something really good on one element and then really bad on other elements. I've seen people who said, we're going to use organic products, but we're importing them from Australia. That's not good, right? I mean, you've got the transportation and all that kind of thing. So you want to think through that, every element. Are there other questions in the chat? Okay, nope.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, so is this more so than catering to nonprofits?
Say that again. Is it more solving?
Catering to nonprofits. Like, do you have to be a nonprofit for social impact and so forth?
No. Some of the best Wash Cycle Laundry is an example of a company that has tremendous social impact. I'm going to give you like 4 or 5 examples of for-profit companies that have great social impact. Do you know the bracelet company that, they dive for trash in the ocean and they make bracelets? They
Yes.
make money off the bracelets, but they are, they're having a good social impact by taking trash out of the ocean. Another example is there's a company called Honeycomb Credit, and they figured out a way to provide loans to people that can't get them from banks. They're still making money, but they're doing good. Another example, Roar for Good is a company, Temple company, that has created technology to protect people who are in different situations, like in the hospitality industry, the people who are doing cleaning services. It's really dangerous sometimes doing that work. And they've come up with technology that protects them. They're making money. The hotels and hospitals are paying them for their service, right? But they're doing good. Does that help?
And Regina, we actually recommend a for-profit multi-bottom line company, because if you could do that successfully, you ensure you're funded. We are also open up to nonprofits and the grants, et cetera, that Ellen described. But for sure, the for-profits, there's a real lot of success stories of Temple alums. Mm-hmm. And it's a way to control your own destiny. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Javier, you had your hand up?
Yes, I did. Hi, Miss Ellen.
Hi.
My name is Javier. I just transferred to Temple this semester. For someone who has a bunch of ideas, entrepreneurial wise, mm-hmm. How do you think this challenge will kind of help someone like this, just getting into the whole entrepreneurial thing, or just trying to take on like the independent projects more so?
Yeah. So let me start with, I love entrepreneurs. They always have a lot of ideas, right? And I have a friend who recommends carrying a little notebook around with you. And every time you get an idea, put the idea on one piece of paper, right? And you're not going to work on all of them, but capture them all, because you might over time, see data or, see situations that bring that idea back, and you can fine tune it some more. So I think that, I think that helps for people who have a lot of ideas. I think the Changemaker, here's what I love about the Changemaker Challenge. We all have ideas. We think about them, right? But in order to go from thinking about it to actually doing it, you have to put your ideas on paper. You have to think through all the questions that the Changemaker questions have been written specifically to help you think through the key things you need in order to go from idea to reality. And so I love the Changemaker Challenge. Forces you to pick one idea and play with it and write it down and talk about it to other people. And you might spend a few hours on it and go, it's just, there's not enough meat here. Well, let me do something else, right? But you've gone from it's in your head, just kind of rattling around, to it's on paper. I've thought through what's the problem, what do I know about it, what's the competition. You now have thought about this stuff. You've put it on paper. You may have drawn the picture of what does it look like. It's gone from rattling in your head to a piece of paper, and now you can say, yeah, this is worth my time, or no, it's not worth my time. And once you say, yeah, this is worth my time, I'm going to submit this, you're going to get feedback. And sometimes the feedback is, whoa, you really need to think about this further. Here's 5 different competitors that you didn't think about. Or the feedback might be, oh, I love this idea. And by the way, here's something you didn't think about that you should think about. That feedback, if you still like the idea after you're done with the competition, that feedback fuels you to the next step. And then let me give you my favorite example. One of a Temple company has gone on to really do really well. It was just an idea. It was like a class project. Never thought she'd go somewhere with it, but she went kind of like, oh, what the heck? I'll submit it. Well, she didn't win the competition. She came in second, but she got so much positive recognition from the people in the room. And, oh, by the way, there happened to be someone in the room who knew a lot about what she was going to do and said, can I, I'm going to mentor you and let's work on this. And it turned into a real company. So you got to start somewhere, right? And this is low stakes, not scary. There's no grade, you can't fail. And that's what I love about this competition. All you're going to do is get some feedback and just throw it in this, just hit that submit button. Don't wait till 12:01, by the way. Lindsay and I know this, 11:59, okay? Because the system shuts down. So don't start at 11:42 either. Give yourself some time to work through everything and but submit on time, okay?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. So to kind of put a voice in my head, and everybody else is that kind of gets like unmotivated or scared when we're going through this process, and it does become overwhelming. We get nervous or shy, and we get like, I guess, like writer's block. What do you think, or how do you think we work our way out of that mental state, or that slouch, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think sometimes having a partner is a good idea. Not everybody likes to have a partner, but I've seen a lot of people that have gotten value from having a partner to kind of talk them out of the, when you're in the dumps or whatever, to kind of talk you through it. The other thing is, like, there's a mentor night on Monday night, right? The mentors are the most encouraging people you will meet, okay? And so they're going to help you, you go, I don't know, I'm not sure, but here's what I'm thinking about, and come in with a picture. Okay. Like I had that, stick figure. Here's how it works. Come in with something. Okay. And if you sit down with one of those mentors, they're going to pull from you. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to pull from you to get you over that. This is really scary hurdle. Okay. But again, there's no grades for this, right? There's no one going to say, oh, that's a dumb idea. There's no danger in doing this. And so I think this is one of the easiest ways to get over that hurdle of, oh, I just don't know.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else like a little nervous about doing it? And if so, what are you nervous about? How do I reassure you? No, again, this woman who did the Changemaker, she had no idea that someone was going to think it was such a great idea. She had no idea, and it really, it morphed into a real company with, 20 people working there and like, real product and stuff like that. Other questions? No. Okay. Alan, back to you.
Did you want to talk about the angels a little bit?
Oh, the angels. Yeah. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. So, networking, talk to people to find angels. So there's individual angels, and then there's angel groups. And there's local angels and angel groups. So first of all, some of the people who come to the competitions, they're actually investors. Not everybody, but there's always a few. You know, through networking, you'll find them. Crunchbase is a great place to search, and just general internet searches. Philly Startup Leaders has a whole list of investors on their site. I encourage you to join Philly Startup Leaders if you're going to be in Philly. It's a great resource for entrepreneurs. But I'll also encourage you, Temple runs a program called Mid-Atlantic Diamond Ventures. Our next forum is March 17th. And unlike most venture forums where you have to be an accredited angel investor, because it's done through a university, we actually we have been able to invite anyone who wants to listen to come, and you'll hear. It's online right now. It'll be in person in June, but you get to hear 6 to 8 entrepreneurs giving a pitch. You also get to, there's some networking afterwards online. We've created these little tables. Lindsay's amazing with this. And you can go from table to table and introduce yourself. Hey, I'm a Temple student. I'm thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. Here's the idea I have, and people will talk to you. Okay. So I highly encourage, it's MADV, MADV, if one of you can put in the chat, madv.org. You can register to attend as a student, and you will be welcome there. And I highly encourage it. If you're, Robinhood has office hours. If you're still in the, I kind of have an idea and I haven't done any work to put it on paper or anything, I wouldn't use it for that. But if you really have sketched out your idea and you have kind of a good sense of who your customers will be, and you think you understand your revenue model and stuff, Robinhood also has office hours. I'll put that in chat, and that's online, and you're welcome to attend that. It's let's see, it's Calendly/Robinhood Ventures, and we do it every Thursday from 12 to 2. You can sign up for half an hour. The Venture Cafe is another great place to talk to people, to find partners, to get advice. That's every Thursday night. I think it starts as early as 3 and goes to 7 for those of you who are over 21. I think they even have free beer sometimes. But you get to meet a lot of people, and they have all kinds of sessions there. And that's every Thursday. So if you have a free Thursday night, that's a good thing to go. PSL has a lot of good activities, and they have an accelerator for people who have an idea. You have to pay some money, but they may even reimburse if you go all the way through the program. They just want to make sure that anyone signing up is really going to do it. So there's some cost. There's also the Small Business Development Center is a great resource for getting support. It's right on Temple's campus, and they're a good friend of us here. So going back to angels, so one of the things you want to do with angels, especially angel groups, is you want to understand what their process is, and almost all of them put it on their website. So Robinhood, for example, puts on our website, you have to apply, okay? And here's who we're looking for. We're looking for companies in this region, in these industries. We're looking for this much money and are at this stage. And most angels do that. So you don't want to waste your time. And some of the applications for angels let you apply to everybody. Don't do that. You want to do your research. So let's say, so Robinhood, for example, likes to invest in companies that are in the Mid-Atlantic region, that are either in tech or life sciences. So we don't do retail or consulting services. We're looking for companies that are looking for 500,000 to 2 million, and that have some proof of concept. So if that's you, you should apply. If that's not you, do the office hours. I mean, if you think you'll be there at some point, use the office hours. But the angels go to a lot of different events, and you should definitely talk to them. When you talk to them, ask for advice. If you know you're not ready for funding, don't ask them for money too early. Instead, ask them for advice. And if you ask them for advice, you might end up with funding. Okay. And then make sure if they say, hey, that's kind of interesting, send me your pitch, send it that afternoon. Don't waste time. Okay. Have your pitch ready and send it. It's kind of like when someone says, send me your resume, and somebody wants to perfect it. Don't just send it. You can tell them, that it's not quite ready. It's draft, or, we're going to be updating this XYZ section, but get it to them while it's hot, while they remember you, because tomorrow they're at another event and they might not remember. So get it out while it's hot. That's my advice. Okay. Other questions? How do you protect intellectual property? Great question. So, first of all, it depends how you're defining intellectual property. If you mean real intellectual property, like a patent and that sort of thing, you need to talk to an IP expert, and the IEI has access to mentors who will give you some time to talk to you, give you enough advice to, one of the big decisions is it even worth patenting or not? Okay. I will tell you that 95%, I think, of applications that we see from, Changemaker Challenge or BYOBB are not really patentable. And you'd be better off focusing on how to make your company great than focusing on how to protect your technology. Okay. There's always going to be competition. If your solution is so simple to copy, then you don't really have a competitive advantage, if that makes sense. But if there is, and I would also tell you, when you're talking to investors, don't share your code. Don't give them all the, don't give the secret sauce. I would really wonder about someone who said, let me look at your code, with a few exceptions. And then if they wanted to look at the code, then you would have them sign an NDA, so they couldn't do anything with it. But for the most part, investors, accelerators, mentors will not sign NDAs. Okay. And you don't want to share like those secrets that are patentable, that if someone had them, they could take your stuff. But most stuff is really, it's the idea, it's the concept, and it's how well you execute. So I actually encourage entrepreneurs to talk to as many people as they can. But if it's true IP, you got to talk to an IP attorney to make sure it makes sense. Now there's things you might want to trademark, like your logo, your name, stuff like that. I would talk to an IP attorney. And there's some great IP clinics, IP legal clinics as well. I don't know if Temple has one, but I know Penn has an IP clinic, and they'll take, if you really have something substantive, they'll take you on for free, which is huge, because it could cost a lot of money to work with a lawyer to get the actual, patent and that sort of thing. And you want to make sure, I guess another thing, you probably have talked about it in other sessions, but one of the things we see with, really early the founders are the reasons why companies break up. So you want to have some type of founders agreement, and they're pretty easy to find. There's a website called, I think it's fi.co, and they have a simple founders agreement. Now, once you get past the simple stuff, you want to have an attorney help you create a founders agreement, but you want to, so some of the fi.co, they've got some tools that help you ask each other the hard questions. It's kind of like if you were going to get married, you have to talk ahead of time about, do you want kids? Do you want a dog? Do you want to live in the suburbs or the city? do you want to work, all those kind of things, but you have to talk to each other about those things. It's the same kind of thing with a founder. Like, how big do you want to grow the company? Do you see yourself staying with it? How big do you want us to grow? Do you want to sell early? Or do you see us never selling? You got to have those and what work do you see yourself doing? You got to ask yourself those really hard questions up front. I encourage you to do that and to document those responses. I am constantly getting, not as much now because I'm not as actively involved at Temple, but I was always getting, founders in tears or very upset because stuff was happening with co-founders. So come to an agreement ahead of time. Make sure you're all on the same page. I think co-founders are one of the best things you can have, but get that documented, make it very clear. And then as you get further along, once you start taking investor money, you actually want to create something called a cap table, which documents very clearly who owns what. And you also want people to vest in your company. Okay. So, like if on day one you said, I'm going to own 50% of the company and you're going to own 50% of the company, and then the founder walks away with 50% of the company, they can own that 50% of the company and not do another minute's worth of work. So you want even, you and your co-founder to have to work to get that, to vest. Okay. It'll take time to get that ownership. And so let's say they only, let's say 6 months into it, they go, you know what, I don't really want to do this. They might have earned, a small percentage of the company, which they deserve for working in the beginning, but the rest of it reverts back to the company so you can give it to another co-founder. That's really important. And there's some very good articles about that. That's just fresh in my mind. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Alan, back to you.
Okay, great. So let's give Ellen a hand. That's tremendous information. She also made tremendously valuable resources available to you. And so now if we could go back to the slide deck, Lindsay. I would like to encourage all of you again to submit to the Changemaker Challenge. Ellen basically walked you through how to put together a very effective submission, how to think about potential funding sources. And as an old favorite musician of mine used to say, just do it. All right. Just sit down for 45 minutes and write your idea down. What's the need you want to address? Who's the target audience that has it? And what's your solution? And why is it different and better than what's already out there? Sorry. Okay, so we'll put up the submission QR code once more. All right, so you have till Wednesday. I will put in the chat my email. If you are getting nervous, if you have questions, chat me. I will be around. Let me just quickly put this. Give me 12 hours, but within 12 hours, I'll get to you. Help if I could spell my name. Okay. Just do it. I love it. Okay. And then if we want to go to the next screen. Expert mentoring, again, as Ellen said, extremely valuable, very low key. We have some really cool people who have agreed to do it with marketing backgrounds, entrepreneurial backgrounds, funding backgrounds. So definitely register here and take advantage of that. Okay, two or three other quick slides and pieces of information. So another program that we're going to start running actually Tuesday is for people who want to basically be solopreneurs. Whether you want make your own apparel, you're your own lawyer, you're a creative who wants to sell work, a writer. A couple of years ago, we had a woman who did wedding vows and sold her service as a wedding vow writer. So anything you want to do, consultant, whatever, we're going to have next Tuesday, the first of about 5 workshops where we're going to have successful, what we'll call, we used to call them freelancers, but it goes so much beyond now because we have social marketing consultants who will be there. We have someone who is a registered goldsmith. She came out of Tyler and does very high-end custom jewelry. Maybe she'll give you a free sample if you come. So we have a lot of people like that. A jazz musician who's part of, for the, Ellen and I will know the, what is it? Cab Calloway Orchestra or Dizzy Gillespie Orchestra, something from way back when. So again, scan that, sign up. If you even want to be a solo social impact advisor or whatever, this would work for you also. And then lastly, we would, because we're always looking to, yes, next is our granddaddy of all, the How to Be Your Own Boss Bowl. So this is for more advanced business ideas. So when Ellen was talking about, you need a management team, you need to have your financial projections. That's how to be your own boss bowl. There's well over $100,000 of cash prizes and service prizes. I'm working with a team from 3 years ago who is still using the lawyer or legal services they won in the competition as they're filing design patents and looking at manufacturing contracts. So very good, very valuable. And that's going to start on February 8th with a virtual session. And again, a lot of people who competed in the idea competition, competing in the Changemaker challenge, then go on to the Be Your Own Boss Bowl, as well as people who aren't a part of either of those, but have more advanced ideas. So again, no matter where you are from initial idea to actually having a business you may have launched with a bunch of revenue, there are opportunities for you to get involved over the next 3 weeks with an IEI. And I strongly encourage you to take advantage of those opportunities. Okay, so I think next is a survey. We're always trying to improve what we offer all of you, no matter what college within Temple you're in, whether you graduated a year ago or 30 years ago. So if you would scan this and give us your quick thoughts, that would be fantastic. And next, I believe we have our suitable point code for undergrads and our guild program suitable points for grad students, if I said that correctly, Lindsay. And I would like to thank everyone for coming, everyone for staying, which is a testament to the information Ellen provided. And I'd also like to shout out, she's working behind the scenes, but as you could tell, she keeps everything here going, is Lindsay Clark, who's also a great resource. She runs all our events and operations within IEI. And if anyone has any questions, I'll stay on for a couple minutes. If not, we hope to see you Monday night at mentoring night and hope to see your submissions begin soon and finalize Tuesday evening.